death doesn't mean it's wrong. Like it's painful if it's like a motorcycle accident, right? But I'm talking about like hospice death, right? That doesn't mean it's wrong just because you feel really sad about it.
Okay, hospice nurse Julie.
Hello.
That's the name.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking.
I mean, my full name is Julie McFadden, but I talk about myself in third person sometimes. Hospice nurse Julie. Mm-hmm.
That's nice. That's kind of like very Seinfeld-esque
right?
for some reason. I don't know
It feels
why.
very weird, but it's funny. I just did a video about that. I was like, "Do you want to see hospice nurse Julie mad?" And I thought I just talked about myself in third person. It's so weird.
That's kind of endearing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my hat backwards because I realize there's probably a shadow on my face. Hope you don't mind. Aside from that, I was thinking, because you have excuse my language, I might curse a little bit. I'll do my best not to.
Nurses curse all the time.
I mean, you guys have a reason. I don't have a reason. Jersey. That's it.
That's the reason.
That's the reason.
That's
Jersey.
your reason.
That's it.
That's all I have to say.
You have a shit ton of followers on TikTok, and you ever like visualize how many, like you try to visualize the actual people that follow you and understand how many people that is?
Oddly, I can't believe you just said that because now I feel a little embarrassed because yes.
Why are you embarrassed?
Because I feel like that sounds what's the word? Like a little ego-y.
I think it's
like
grounding.
Because I think about stadiums, like when people when Elton John sells out a stadium of however many people.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
It's a fraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bring that up not to like stroke your ego, but just because I love saying that because, for instance, when I started this podcast, I was always thinking self-conscious, like, I'm going to talk about death. Like, is there really an audience for that? And I didn't care. I cared, obviously, but I wasn't trying to focus on like, oh, well, people like it. I really just believe in this, want to do it. But you have this niche and you have a tremendous following. So it does kind of give me hope in regards to the world of understanding death on that level and the way you do it. It's so important.
Yeah, it's validating. And can I just make a quick note that I'm not comparing myself to Elton John. Elton John is amazing. Not comparing myself to Elton John. But that is how I thought of it when I was thinking of the numbers.
I was hoping you'd drop a tune like at the end for the outro. Right. I told you we have good mics.
Like, who is this chick? Fucking Elton John. Come on now. Elton John is king.
Speaking of outside of Elton John, I have so many questions in regards to, I don't know if you want, just in case the whatever million people that already know your name don't know your name, introduce yourself again and what you're doing. Yeah,
so I'm hospice nurse Julie. Mm-hmm. That's my name on TikTok. So TikTok is where I originally so I was like you. I knew I had some cool information and I think it actually is cool. Like I think people need to know about death and dying, and there's some really fascinating facts about it. And so I knew I wanted to get it out. I didn't think people would listen, but I thought TikTok was a good place to do it because you can go viral quicker because it's with the algorithm. Like if people are watching it, the TikTok will send it out for the most part,
right.
Which is a whole nother story I could get into, but because now it's not totally like that. But so it was validating. I put out a couple videos and then it went viral and then it just went from there. So that's who I am. I'm on TikTok educating about death and dying. And then I've started doing other platforms as well, Instagram, Facebook, which is funny because I think that's more my audience is Facebook, but I didn't start there.
Why is that?
Just the age range. I feel like people talk about death and dying, they assume older people want to talk about it. And that's, I want everyone to talk about it, but older people think about it more, I think. And older people are on Facebook.
And so a lot, obviously younger people are on TikTok, it seems, for the most part. So you do see a wide range of younger audience that are gravitated to your death talking?
Yeah. I mean, I do get analytics and I do see the main age group is like 30 to 50, and they're on TikTok. That's but nice. It is a wide range. But
do you correlate? Well, when did you start? When did you really start your first video? When you started picking up steam? How long ago was it?
A year ago. Okay. So in May, my first one of my I think I was 4 videos in, and I just started getting thousands of followers.
And there was just a realization there's something there.
Yeah.
Well, the way you do it, for anyone that hasn't seen you, is just like it's upbeat. It's not, even though you speak about heavy topics and some of the stories you share are very deep and just heavy, you do it in a manner that's digestible and I think people just can, swallow easier.
Good. I hope so.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, you're hilarious. You're ready to come in here hot saying, yeah, you're Elton John, even though you said you're not. But something tells me you got vocals back there. So how did you become a hospice nurse? Was that by accident or by?
No, definitely by choice. So I've been a nurse for about 14 years. I need to always like recheck myself because years fly by, but I think it's about 14. So I was an ICU nurse for most of those years. And I just was a very unhappy ICU nurse for way too long. I think it was like 9 years. I mean, that's a long time to not like your job. And it was definitely a job. I definitely didn't like it. I had great aspirations of what I was going to be doing with my nursing career. I was going to go back to school and work in anesthesia. And like I had all of these plans. And then I actually did it. I actually did nursing. And I was like, wait a minute, this is rough. This is like a hurry up and care situation. It's not like I thought. It was just so working in the ICU gave me a very different view of life and work and being a nurse and how people were dying and the disservice we were doing to people and families, our healthcare system in general. And it's no one's fault. It's like death is the worst possible answer. And I just started learning that that's not true. I thought there has to be a better way for someone to know they're dying and then make a choice on how they want to do it.
Right.
Because there's certain diseases, unfortunately, where we're at that are, like you will die from them. And how do you want to do that? And I think that question should be asked right when you get diagnosed, because otherwise you end up in an ICU hooked up to tons of machines and then you die that way. And no one has the conversation about what's actually happening until it's too late. And then they have to die in the hospital because they're too sick. And that happened so many times over 9 years that I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I became a hospice nurse.
And it relates to another post I saw you make. You were speaking on, I hope this was you. There's a post in regards to you can change if you don't like what you're doing. It was cool because it wasn't even related to hospice or what in general. It's a very general statement that if you're doing something you don't like, just stop and change.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool how you're mixing in just different inspirational.
That's for nurses because I feel like nursing is a really diverse career. And it's crazy how like I love my job now. I love it. I love what I do. I would do it for free. I mean, I like getting paid too, but like say I had all the money in the world, I still would do my job.
That's huge.
I still would do it. Maybe not full time, but I would still want to meet people. I would still want to educate about hospice. I would still want to help people die in a peaceful way if I can. Like I would still want to do it. And prior to becoming a hospice nurse, I hated nursing. And I thought I made the wrong career. I made the wrong career choice. This is not for me. I'm not meant to be a nurse. And that's just not true. And people just need to have the courage, which is hard, to move around and try new things.
Yeah, I feel like especially if you've been there for a long time, it gets harder and harder. You feel like you're pigeonholed into it.
Totally.
I'm kind of just really jumping in there, but I might be all over the place. Bear with me.
Go for it.
Have any one of your patients ever expressed that they were scared to die, and like maybe not asked you the question about it, but have they said, "I'm scared to transition"?
Oh, totally.
So what do you say to that?
So one, I usually feel like, actually really happy when someone opens up to me like that because many people don't. And if they do, I know I've done a good job. So I'm like so happy they felt safe enough to say something like that because that's such a vulnerable thing to admit. I could I'm not going to cry because I'm too shut down right now, but that could make me cry in a like weepy connection, like this is what life's all about kind of way when someone opens up like that because it's such a vulnerable place to be and a vulnerable thing to admit because when you are scared, that's a really like usually it's like anger comes out first or like, but the whole idea of admitting to somebody like I'm just afraid, I'm afraid to die, like that statement right there is so vulnerable to say because once you admit it, it's like out there. And I think most people don't want to do that. So when I get someone who is like open enough to say, I'm afraid, it's like, I know we're in a good spot because that's what most people need to do, I think. And the most people don't because it's too scary to admit. Right. So when they do, all I do is I try not to fix it. And I just sort of sit there and I'll maybe even go like, I know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like, I just try to be a totally normal human being and just say like, yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah.
Like it's a totally, or which just sounds so crazy, but I swear it doesn't seem crazy in the moment. Like I'll make a joke being like, no shit. Like, duh. Yeah, you're scared. That's such a normal thing to feel. And being in this unknown space is like, you are so normal to be afraid right now. And that's a normal human emotion. And I'm so happy that you can even be in touch with that. And that's what and then I'll go into it. And that's what we're here for, is to like help you through that. And you're going to feel scared some days, and then angry other days, and then peaceful some days. And we're just going to be here to validate that that's a normal human emotion. And to be honest, you're way ahead of the game, because most people won't even admit that. And the people that I find that do admit that are usually end up having a more peaceful journey, a more fulfilled journey at the end of their life. So
that's just a beautiful way of handling it. Not trying to, I feel like, I know you said you're trying to be human, but I feel like a lot of people might react thinking they have to respond with an answer.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, that acknowledgement, that goes a long way. Maybe it makes them feel a little less alone. Are you guys taught leading into it, like institutionally, do you learn like psychology? Like what are the methods for you to learn? Are you just thrown in the fire and you figure it out?
Oh my God, great question.
Yeah, thanks. I'm here for that.
David, do you go by David or Dave?
I would say David. I introduce myself as David, but people call me whatever. I'm just like, all right, cool.
Okay. Anyway, just a great question. No, we're not taught. That's such a good question, because it's like, how the fuck, I talk about swearing, but like, how the fuck is anyone supposed to know how to do this? I have no idea. I feel like my personality and life experience and stuff has helped me do this. And I do have a degree in psychology now that I think about this. I do. Okay. I have a 4-year degree in psychology that I got before I was a nurse, which I don't think actually plays into any of this. It
might subconsciously, you might just be doing things you learned you don't even know.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Maybe not.
So no one is taught. Side note, I am doing a podcast coming up with a guy who was an ICU physician who has a whole program that he does where he teaches physicians how to have conversations like this, because we aren't taught. It's not even talked about. At least from what I can remember in nursing school, I do not remember even learning about death and dying.
That's what I thought. I'm not anywhere associated with the industry. I don't know who I spoke to or heard, but it seemed like that was a missing piece.
Yeah. And the way I learned, I think, was through time and experience. And I had a really good mentor, Dr. Cartmel. I should really reach out to her and like tell her this. I followed her around, because when you're a hospice nurse, you work with hospice doctors, and they do what we call face-to-faces. They don't have to do it all the time, but they do eventually have to see the patient face-to-face. And I used to do visits with her when she would do face-to-faces with my patients, and I would listen to her talk, and she was like a pro. So that's how I learned. A lot of the stuff that I've said are regurgitations from her mouth. It's like I literally just copied what she said.
What if you didn't have a good mentor? What the hell do you do?
You're a bad hospice nurse. No, I don't know. I shouldn't say that, but there are definitely any nurse or any physician or any there are people who just aren't good at people.
It's every they just can't.
They're just not good at it. But I talked to the physician that has this program where he teaches physicians how to talk about this, and he says people can be taught. So that's great. So, but no, we aren't. I wasn't. I mean, I think personality and mirroring other people has helped me, and just being. I'm really into it. I'm really into people. I'm really into death and dying, and like being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So like when someone says like, I'm really afraid to die, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. Right. And that's just because I'm around it all the time. So and that just took time. I'm sure when I was an ICU nurse, 10 years ago, I probably would have been like, it's okay. You don't have to be afraid. It just takes time. Yeah. That was a really long-winded, I don't know.
No. I think you answered my question. I was just wondering, it seems like it's not in the curriculum like it should be. And I hate referencing a book that I haven't read or finished, but on death and dying.
Is that what it's called?
Who's the famous? It's like a famous like staple of a book. Should I Google this
Oh
right
God,
now?
I probably didn't read it either. People always ask me about books.
9 times out of 10, I remember the author's name, and anyone listening that's like in the clinical field is probably going to hate me. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She wrote a book on death and dying, and for anyone that has read it, I could be completely butchering this, but I thought the book kind of specified how the institutions and hospitals are not really taught, at least part of the book maybe, are not really taught on how to handle death. And I feel like the hospitals, I just had a great podcast with BJ Miller, and BJ Miller, he had an amazing TED talk. I
else talked about BJ Miller. I gotta check this dude out.
I'll send you his TED talk. Something about this guy was just so like deep. I feel like he was like a poet, even though he wasn't. He was just so deep and insightful. And his mission is to kind of transition that palliative hospice transition end of life to just with more care and insight and thoughtfulness. And I just feel like it's not really considered enough.
Is he a physician? Like, what's his?
Yeah, he's a physician. Okay. But he was just he had
is he single?
But he is a good looking man. He's a good looking man. I'm not gonna lie.
Just kidding.
Yeah. But I'll send you his TED talk to start there. It's like a great 20-minute lecture, and he's amazing. Okay. I don't know where the hell I was going with that. But,
I know. Sorry, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. People aren't taught things.
I could be butchering this book. It might have nothing to do with that, to be honest. But it just relates to what you were doing. How it seems like it should be more part of the curriculum as opposed to getting thrown in the fire. Because my thought is, if you get thrown in the fire, you're going to learn. But what about the poor people that you're dealing with for the first couple times? You know what I mean? I don't know if you like butcher it up a little bit. Yeah,
and really, along the lines of like butchering it up, I feel like even if you are taught, right? Like even if there is a whole like chapter in the book when you're in school, like it still takes real world experience in general, but it wouldn't hurt. That's for sure I think there needs to be a whole entire shift in end of life. I just think we do it wrong in the world, but I don't really know. My experience is in America. So, but to me in America, we do it wrong. Right. We work too hard to get people to not die, and it just causes a lot of suffering.
What about the flip side of being on your side? How the hell do you deal with it? Is that
it's so funny you say this. So really, I'm actually pretty good at shutting it down. Like as far as like emotionally, like I have a really good separation from work in my life. And the only way I was able to do that was to work I have a really good setup that not everyone is able to do, but I really encourage people to try. I think a lot of people think they can't do it. People meaning nurses or physicians or anyone in the healthcare field. I work per diem. So I still work like 32 to 40 hours a week. So it's still pretty much full time, but because it's per diem, I don't have to work like holidays. I don't have to work overtime. I don't have to work on call hours. Every place you go will be different, but I highly suggest you look for places that will do this. And I make my own schedule. I just feel very separate from my job because it's like I'm like a helper. Like I help out the other nurses and
on your own accord.
On my own accord, yeah. So, and then I can take breaks a lot. And I can do that because I pay for my own insurance. I plan for my own retirement. I don't get paid days off, but I plan for all of that. You get paid more as a per diem. So like I make it all work for me. And because of that, I have a really good balance between my own life and work life. And I put myself, this sounds awful, but hear me out. I put myself before my patients, before work, before like myself is first. And because of that, I can be a really good nurse. So I think so often it's so easy to be like, the patient matters most. And they do to an extent, but there's also an extent where you have to shut it down and you have to be like, sorry, I can't work late. I can't come to that visit late because I can't work late. An end of story. And there's something about that helps me survive so I don't get sucked into all of the emotional part of it because then you can't do your job. And there's a fine line there because last week, so normally I would just sit on that. And be like, that's what it is. You have to do that. But last week, I will say I did not do that because I couldn't, because there are certain circumstances where like, shit, you just can't. Like I was helping someone with a die with dignity medication, which means they can take medication to end their own life, and which I fully believe in. And they wanted a nurse to be there when they were taking it, just for their family and like all the things, right? And that was a moment where I was like, okay, boundaries, Julie. This is like someone's last day on planet Earth. Like, I think you can work past 5. Like,
Yeah.
and of course, like, right, like there's like a give and take to this. And that week, for whatever reason, was just like really, really, really heavy. And I think it affected me like crazy. And I think it's because I took my boundaries away and said, you know what? This is your time. I'm here for you and your family. And like whatever happens, happens. I'll be here till you guys need me. Because to me, it mattered that much. Right. So, and because of that, I did suffer. I don't know. I did whatever the word, like it felt way more heavy. I like was crying all week. Like I couldn't do anything after work. I was just like in bed and just sort of like, oh man, just so drained. So if my work was like that all the time, I could definitely not do it. But it's like, I only do that every once in a while because there's certain circumstances where you just sort of have to, and you know, it's okay. And what I did was because I worked per diem, I took 2 days off that week and just did exactly what I wanted to do, which is usually be outside and be near the ocean or in trees and be alone. I need to be alone. That helps me really fill up. And 2 days later, I was like ready to go at it again. But so boundaries help me not make it so heavy when I can't have that, because there's certain circumstances where it's like you need to be there for somebody because it matters. Then I have to take more days off and really take care of myself. And that will look different for everybody. For me, I need to be away from people and in nature. Some people need to be with people and whatever. I don't know what they do, but
I mean that makes sense. In order for you to do good at what you do, you gotta optimize yourself. So if you don't want to come in, like it's like if you didn't sleep last night, you're not going to come in ready to go and be beneficial to that person.
Yeah.
So it's impressive that you're able to shape those two worlds, because I feel like that, to me, I don't know how I would handle it, but I feel like I would take that shit home with me way too easily. I don't know what that would do to me. Even though I feel like there are so many lessons in what you do that I'm sure you've learned from your patients and your experience, because death is one hell of a teacher, whether it's personal or through your clients. So it's a pretty loaded question, but what are some of the things, whatever comes to mind, like what have you learned most from your experience as a hospice nurse that you've been able to apply to your own life, whether it's gratefulness or et cetera, et cetera?
I think, and this is what I try, this is literally why I started a TikTok, is that acceptance is like being able to live a life of acceptance will help you live better and die better. So anyone who is accepting their diagnosis, willing to say to me, I'm afraid, willing to say, I don't want to die, or say like, I'm pissed, or whatever they say, right? Anyone, like acceptance of emotions, acceptance of the experience, acceptance of the prognosis. I'm relating it to hospice, right? I feel like that transcends everything. I think that is how life, that's how to live a free life, you need to live in acceptance of whatever is happening. And my patients have taught me that. And that goes for if you're dying on hospice, or if you're like stuck in traffic and you're late to something, right? Like acceptance is the answer to all my problems today.
That example happened to me today. So literally pulling out on my street at a breakfast at 8 a.m. with a good friend of mine before here. And I was trying to, long story short, I was kind of cutting it close. And as I was making a left, of course, there's like construction going on, and there's and instantly I made the left. And like my natural instinct was like to say, oh, God damn it. And I shut that down quickly. I'm getting much better at that this point in my life. And I was like, all right, well, I can't. What am I going to do? Am I going to run this guy over? So I just sat there and waited. And as soon as the guy like made another gesture to stop, I instinctually looked to my right, and the guy next to me was literally banging the wheel, threw his hands in the air, cursing at himself. And I was like, there's the difference. I'm not like tooting my own horn, I was like, Jesus, like that guy is just not accepting the situation and then causing himself stress and mental decay in the moment.
Totally.
So I like to think that's what you're saying, and that acceptance on so many levels, whereas death is just like, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you learn that from the best people in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that's just one of the things. I mean, of course, gratefulness, of course, being grateful. Like every night I do this thing that I do this little email thing and send it to friends, and we all send it to each other about being grateful and like what was good, what was bad, and all the different things. And I always put health on there because I feel like my patients always talk to me too about how like I wish I would have understood how lucky I was that I could like walk around and get outside and drive and not be in pain. And, it's just really easy to take really simple things for granted.
Yeah, especially the simple things because they're so routine. And it's like, oh, I walk every day. Why am I going to think about that? But then once you see an example of someone that can't do something you do every day, it opens your eyes. And not a lot of people take a moment to reflect on that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in a really important position. And I feel like that question I just asked was kind of like a fading out question. We're like at the big crescendo at the end. But I wanted to ask you about what do you call it? Deathbed visions?
Mm-hmm.
Deathbed visions? Yeah. What the hell's going on there? I hear that I've heard that multiple times. Like so people see dead relatives and or pets before they pass, and that's a constant thing?
Yeah. So we meaning I guess like the hospice world would call it visioning, and it usually happens like a month before someone's going to die. If they're on hospice, I don't mean like just randomly in the world, but if we know they're dying, usually about a month before. But people do this all the time. So it doesn't have to be a month exactly is my point. And they will see and talk about seeing dead relatives or loved ones. So it doesn't have to be relatives. Because whenever I say that, people are like, I hate my relatives. I'm not going to see them. I'm like, no, just anyone like you love, usually. It's very comforting. So dead relatives, friends, pets, sometimes angels, sometimes God or Jesus or whoever they associate with, that whatever religion they are. It doesn't have to be Jesus. But so they will see them. Sometimes it's in dreams, but usually it's like actually seeing them.
Oh, they're awake?
They're awake and usually very lucid. And it just happens so much that we actually educate about it. So people and family members aren't afraid because it never fails. We get a call, my dad's hallucinating. He's telling me he's seeing his parents. And then I get there and he's like not hallucinating. And he seems very alert and oriented, is actually comforted the fact that like his parents came to him and said, hey, don't worry about everything. We'll come and get you. It's so, and then I have to explain to them like, oh, this is actually just visioning. And never fails. People always think, well, one, they always think, because those are the videos that always go viral on my TikTok, and so when anything's viral, you get a bunch of negative stuff too.
Naturally.
So people always think that I am trying to push the agenda of like an afterlife and it's not. I mean, I have no clue what happens after we die. But I do know that witnessing people die over and over again, because I do, I'm a hospice nurse. This is a thing that happens, and it happens a lot. I mean, definitely more than 50% of people.
Wow.
It happens to. And then they say, well, it's probably because of the drugs. And no, they're usually not on drugs. Or if they are, that those drugs don't cause hallucinations. So it's never anything that's like confusing or they're agitated, because so let me just differentiate, like show you the difference, and then I'll be done. It's a long-winded answer.
Don't stop.
Like people with like so people with like dementia, right? They already have agitation sometimes, and they will see like pets or spiders, or they might be agitated by it. That's much different than visioning. And people with dementia can also have visions. So the difference is they're pleasant and they're happy about it and they feel comforted by it. So it's not, if someone's agitated by it, that's usually some kind of agitation or delirium. Delirium is usually associated with like fear and anxiety and agitation, versus this very clear idea of like mom's here. She's telling me it's okay. So that's the difference. And it's amazing. It's beautiful to watch.
What does that do to your, I know you're saying you got some negative slack about pushing the afterlife, but come on, like what's.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I always have felt like something happens after this. And I'm very clear to say, I don't know what it is, but I think it's good. And hospice has only solidified that more, right? When I see people staring up at something and reaching up and saying mom or smiling or, yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. I don't know what it is, but it makes me feel comforted, and they sure as hell look really comforted, which is what we all want, right? So
being around death, does it reassure you? An experience like this, does it give you more peace and less fear around what you're?
Oh, totally.
Like you accept it back to that?
Yes. Like I do always say, like, I don't want to die. If I got diagnosed with a terminal illness tomorrow, I would be like pissed,
Right, yeah.
and I'd have all the emotions. I would still have fear. I would still have sadness and anger. But for the most part, I don't fear death.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
I wonder how many hospice nurses do feel like that. Once you do what you do, I feel like at some point you're going to come to terms with it. I would like to think.
I feel like most of us feel the same.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've experienced death. And have you experienced like any personal loss in your life?
Mm-hmm, yes.
And is your lessons from hospice applied to your grieving process? Or is it kind of like once shit happens to you, it could be a completely different ballgame, obviously?
Right. Well, I think too, there is at least for me, there's all of my like real personal are kind of like yours, like very sudden loss of like something that you're like, it's, so I wasn't prepared. So I feel like hospice does a service where it prepares people because you have time, so all of my loss has not been like that. It's been like a sudden tragic accident. Right. Yeah. And that, it's definitely shaped. I don't know what your question was. It feels different for me, but I'm still okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was just because like hospice, it's still obviously personal because you're, but it's still a patient. I'm not diminishing it. I don't know what I mean, but so when you lose someone in your life that like personally, I just wonder how much of a difference that is, in the way you process it and the way, if you can apply what you've learned by being around death.
Yeah.
Seeing people pass, and you can apply those lessons for your own healing when you lose someone.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I actually haven't, now that I think about it. All of my like really great loss, like my like devastating loss was before I was even a nurse.
Oh, wow.
I was young. So, but now I do think, because it's going to happen again. That's life, right? I do feel like this, what I've learned about death now will definitely help. Will definitely help in the future. It probably won't help, but it'll help the grieving process in general. But like grief is grief.
Yeah.
Whether you understand death and don't think it's the worst thing, like you will still have, or I think I'll definitely still have like grief and deep sadness.
Yeah. You're not going to have like a grief Kevlar vest on.
Yeah.
But I think the built-in awareness that you're implementing to your audience, it does, like you've mentioned, it does help, a preparedness for it. It's not gonna, it's still gonna hurt. It's still gonna suck. You're still gonna have your ups and downs of emotions. But I think that awareness you're building in just allows you to maybe process it and deal with it in a better way, possibly, or I hope. But I don't know. Then again, when shit happens, sometimes you don't know how the hell you're gonna react.
Yeah, well, that's what I'd say too. Is like people will write in and they'll be like, what will they say? I'm trying to think of an example, but like, just because you feel really like God, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Dead air. But I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say. It's like death doesn't mean it's wrong. Like it does. It's painful if it's like a motorcycle accident, right? But I'm talking about like hospice death, right? That doesn't mean it's wrong just because you feel really sad about it.
Right.
Like you're going to.
Yeah.
Like people will be like, my dad died and I can't. I feel devastated. I can't get over it. Like help me. What can I do? And it's like, there's not much to do. Like that's a pretty appropriate response
Yeah.
to your dad dying
Yeah.
or whoever's really close. That's a really appropriate response. Like you feel really sad in the moment. Like that's all really appropriate. It doesn't take, just because you have knowledge about it, like I'm here to bring you knowledge to decrease your fear, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be really sad and it's not going to feel really bad.
Right.
That's also part of it. So I think we also we as humans, I guess I shouldn't speak as we, but it does seem like pretty collective. We don't want to feel bad.
Right.
If we feel bad, something's wrong. We need to fix this because we don't like feeling bad. But it's kind of like, unfortunately, this is what's going to, you're going to feel bad and that's pretty appropriate. And there are support. I always say, like, I feel like healing is in community. Like we need to not feel alone. We never want to reach out. I keep talking in this collective we. I'm so sorry, people, if you're like, listen, that's not me.
Nah, it's good.
But in general, like, I don't want to reach out when I feel really bad. I want to, like, but then there is something about a community of people who say, me too. I have felt that too. That can be really healing.
Yeah, there's a whole movement on that.
Yes.
Yeah, see, there's a reason why I was calling Me Too.
Oh my God.
But it kind of does relate to full circle about what you were saying. When I asked the question about, have any of your patients asked if they were, or mentioned that they were scared of dying, and your response was, well, yeah. And I think that's an appropriate response back to people that are, however you react is appropriate. I mean, I don't think there's I don't think there's a right way to grieve. And I think like how you're saying, oh yeah, how you feel like that, that's appropriate. And I feel like no matter how they react, it's kind of appropriate. You just kind of let that be without forcing to fix it and thinking is this right or wrong.
Yeah.
And no matter what preparedness we have, it's going to hit you.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. But in regards to what you're doing, I think I just love what you're doing. And you do it in such a tasteful, fun, as weird as that sounds, way of just offering really great information. You do it in such a great way. You're a lovely conversation. You're easy to talk to. So it's no question. It's easy to see why you're good at what you do and why people are following you. It's pretty basic. So I'm excited to see what's next. Hopefully you continue to hop on more podcasts to get your voice out there even more beyond this, because you're a great little contestant. That's the wrong word.
I just like little. I'll take it.
Little?
Like I'm little.
Oh, is that what I said? Little?
Yeah, you go. Great little. I was like, you're right. I am little.
Is what's wrong? Is something wrong with little or?
No, I like being. Okay. I want to be little. I'm not really little. I'm kind of like 5'8" and not little. So when someone says little, I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I thought it felt right for me. So I mean, that's your own prerogative. But thank you so much for being on here. I don't know if there's any last minute plugs. I'll put everything on for people to contact or find you. But is there anything else you want to drop before we bounce out of here?
No, nothing else. Just come find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I'm on all of the things.
You're on all the things.
Which is a lot, but I'm into it, and that's it. Thanks for listening and talking to me. It's been great.
I look forward to people hearing this. And look at that. We said we wanted to cap out at 40 minutes. We're at 39 minutes and 45 seconds. So look at this timing.
Perfect.
I almost want to wait 15 seconds just so we can hit the 40 on the dot. But thank you so much. You were great. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. And until next time, ciao. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.